Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on SpeedLab TV. I'm Chris Wheeler, and you are now in the Wheelhouse. And joining me, a good friend of mine, Mr. El Presidente, the boss man down there in Daytona Beach at IMSA, John Doonan. Welcome, buddy.
Hey, it's great to see you, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. And I love being first in this business, and to be on the original and episode one. Really honored and thrilled that you're doing this, and can't wait to get back to real racing. It's fun to do these shows and everything virtually, but man, I know you are too, just itching to get back.
Absolutely. Now, you're not going to pour chocolate milk on yourself, are you? It's something you do to make you like.
Did a lot of that last summer. That was it was a dream summer for us, and not only just because I wanted it so bad for the Mazda brand all those years, but for me personally, getting one at Road America was hard to contain myself. I'd been going there since I was 6 weeks old with my dad and my family, and wanted to win one there real bad. And we didn't think we had a shot that day, and lo and behold, it all came together.
Well, let's talk about what's going on right now. Obviously, since last year and those triumphant wins with Mazda, you've moved to Daytona Beach, Florida. And you've started steering the ship that is known as IMSA Sports Cars. There's been some quick changes. I think people are already seeing the positive effect of the John Doonan era. But then this COVID-19 thing hits us, man. Like, what? Yourself and then your counterparts over there at NASCAR and everybody within the France organization has been working around the clock. So talk to us about what's going on currently with IMSA.
Well, much like everybody, we're in a little bit of a wait-and-see mode. But, just today, a few hours ago, NASCAR announced they're going back to racing without fans at Darlington on May 17th. So really happy for Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell and obviously Mr. France and the whole family, because, that product is the foundation of what started here on the beach and what started over to my right here across the street. At the Speedway, and I know everyone's itching to get back in a safe manner. That's the trick of this whole thing is, we want to do what we do. We want to put on a show for our massive audience from NASCAR to IMSA, but we also want and need to do it in a safe manner. And there's a bunch of very strict protocols that are going to be followed when those teams go to compete at Darlington. From someone like yourself who's a spotter, they're going to be spread out across all the grandstands in social distancing manner. But the fact is, we're going to go back to making noise, and we want to do the same thing on the IMSA side as soon as possible. We talked to all the series yesterday, from the WeatherTech Championship to Michelin Pilot Challenge to all of our single makes like Porsche, Lamborghini, and Prototype Challenge, and we want to get back to it as soon as we can, and we're shooting for the end of June at Watkins Glen, and hopefully that holds true. But as you know, you start each day working on what you know, and by noon, something's changed. So we just got to be patient. We want to make progress, but we still want to be sensitive to the situation.
So we know where you're at now. We know what's going on, but last year I was able to make it to my first runoffs outside of Indianapolis. I was there when they were at IMS, and you were gracious enough to invite me to the Mazda family dinner. And you gave a speech. Granted, looking back, there was a lot of underlying reasons to why the speech was so powerful. Because it wasn't but a few days later, I think, or a few weeks later, shall I say, that it was announced that you were headed to Daytona. But where did this all come from? Because it was in that – I've known that your love for the sport for a long time and your dedication to the people involved, but that night really you cracked your own egg open and really told the people, what drew you in all those years ago, I believe, at Road America.
Yeah, it much like the passion comes from somewhere. And for me, it started with my grandfather, who was a big car guy, and just recently sent some pictures over to our partners at Ferrari, showing my grandfather in the Ferrari factory years ago. He used to go over there and pick out a car every once in a while, and wish we had a few of those still. And then that trickled on to my dad. My dad started grassroots club racing when he was in the Navy out in California, and first civilian job was in the Chicago area, and he he found places like Road America and Black Hawk Farms, and he carried on racing like that on an amateur basis. And I was at the June Sprints when I was 6 weeks old at Road America, which was really a place where I think there's still dirt under my fingernails from that place when playing with my Matchbox cars in the dirt and things like that. But it's really been a generational thing. And from where you're sitting, there's so many family stories of the sport, and going to Indianapolis when I was 7 and went with my grandfather and my dad every year. And it's in your blood. And so to be able to do what I've had the opportunity to do, from the grassroots racing of what we did in Mazda to absolute dream opportunity here, honored to work for the France family, and that they've given and put the faith in me to lead IMSA. I became a huge fan of IMSA when I was 9-10 years old, sitting on the hill at Road America and watching the likes of Al Holbert and Derek Bell and all the stars, and Hurley Haywood and all those guys and gals that made up IMSA. And I've always seen IMSA as a family, and I want to treat it that way always. But maybe it was meant to be. This is my sister and I at Road America. They had garbage cans. I used to sit on the top of the can. So this is one of the very early pit stands. Had my clipboard on there, but it's always been a family deal for us, and I just very, very lucky and fortunate and blessed to be able to continue on and do this as a career, and try to continue on what the France family and the Bishop family started with IMSA.
So you mentioned family. I've got a surprise for you. And so it's funny that you sent some of those photos, because I can't wait to see your reaction here. What do these photos mean to you?
Oh man, makes my hair on my arm stand up. And that patch on my hat, Mom sewed that on my hat, and that is a patch. It's a steering wheel, and on the top it says Road, and the bottom it says America. And I'm sitting in the Jaguar XKE that was owned by Bill Vincent Sr. And his partner John Welch, and my dad was John's instructor. And this is back in the days when you went to driver's school. There's a second seat in that car. And my dad was John's instructor at Black Hawk Farms in that school, in that Jaguar and C production. But so crazy. Billy Vincent, Bill Vincent's son, obviously has had a terrific career in IndyCar, worked for Newman Haas, certainly worked for Penske Racing, now works for Sam Schmidt and the Schmidt-Peterson group. And gosh, that's special right there. That's 1978 right there.
Wow. Now, the next photo to the other side apparently was the coolest Volkswagen Bug anybody's ever seen.
I'm gonna have to give Billy a hard time on this. Oh my gosh.
Now, Billy told me when he was a kid, he loved that Beetle so much he bought a Matchbox and painted it that matching copper color.
Yeah, so great story on that car. So it was the winter, and I can't believe that I remember this, but I'm telling you, I remember it was like yesterday. It was 1974, Chicago winter, and there's a knock at the door, and it's a young woman, and out in the street in front of our house is a Volkswagen Beetle, headlights still on, but she needs to borrow our phone to call her boyfriend, who was supposed to fix the car. Unfortunately, this thing drops a valve in the middle of winter in the snow. And so my dad said, well, I know a little bit about cars, maybe I look at it for you. And she said, I just want to sell it. I need this car out of my life. It's been nothing but trouble. And Dad said, well, what do you want for it? And she said, $150. So this is a 1969 Type 1 VW Beetle, flat windshield. And it was tan. And I remember vividly, like, rushing to put my hat and gloves on. I'm at this point almost 5 years old, but I remember this like it was yesterday. And we pushed the car into the garage, and over the winter of 74, Dad built that car into a road racing Beetle. And he built it originally for a class called Sedan 5, which was in Midwestern Council. And the car developed, put fiberglass fenders on it. He used to run Porsche brakes and built a 1800cc Volkswagen Type 1 with Solex carburetors. And back in those days, Volkswagens were powering USAC midgets. And so guys like Rich Vogler and Mel Kenyon and Tom Bigelow were running all VW Power. So those same folks out of California, Autocraft Works, that were building those cars, built the heads for the Volkswagen. And when that thing was finally in its prime, he went through the speed trap going into turn 5 at Road America, 139 miles an hour. So that thing was no slouch. But I found that car. It's owned by a guy named Jeff Kent. It's out in Colorado, running in vintage historic. And I had dinner with him several months ago, and I said, just give me right of first refusal, because I'd love to have that car back in the family.
Now, that's not the only car, though, and family car-wise, that you would have been adding, because you got one not too many years ago and did a full restoration on it.
Yeah, we got a Crosley 32F, which was originally Bob Lobenberg's car, and took it back to all original thanks to my friend Bruce Lindstrand up in Wisconsin. And, we moved that car on. A guy named Ori Voigtman owns it now, but it's also got a right of first refusal on it. And literally a few months ago, we found my grandfather's 1947 Curtis Craft midget. So that's now back in the family. It's actually here in Daytona at Troy Fliss's shop, and we're going to try to at least fire that thing up. We need to find somebody tiny to drive it, though. I can't fit in that thing.
So the common theme here is family. I think my 240 plus days a year on the road sometimes can be a bit aggressive. I'm going from sprint car tracks to drag racing events, to IMSA events, to IndyCar, to NASCAR, to off-road, and then everything in the middle. Picking up a Wednesday dirt track on my way through. But your schedule, people always say, "Oh, how do I get a hold of you, Chris? You're so hard to get a hold of." And I said, "You don't know John Doonan, the busiest guy I know." Talk to me. This is almost an advice thing for the viewers. You've got a great wife. You've got a great couple kids. Real strong family. How do you manage this through everything?
Well, it's tricky. Get on the road a lot. You have almost a virtual relationship with your kids and your family and your dog. And frankly, this whole pandemic that we're going through, I think, has changed everybody's perspective on. Now you're stuck in a house, if you will, and I hate the word stuck because you're with people that you care about. But I think this whole situation has taught us about caring for those that are so close to us. But in the end, it's about balance. For me, faith is a big thing, and so it's something that's kept me strong while on the road all these years. It's about pursuing a passion and having people around you that support you in that. And as I said, it was a family deal for my dad and my mom and sister and I going to the racetrack together. And it's always what I saw IMSA as, frankly. And I shared with the teams yesterday on the series calls that my dad told me once that, I remember this vividly, we were going to a race at Blackhawk one Saturday morning, and I got finally moved up to sit in the front seat, and was riding on with Dad, and he said, son, if something ever happens to me, the people from racing will be the first people on the doorstep asking what they can do to help you and your mom and your sister. And I'll tell you what, Chris, Dad passed away in '93. And the very first knock on the door the next morning, well, we're still asleep, actually trying to recover from the overnight deal, were two of Dad's buddies from racing. I know I've shared this with you. I've shared it with Tony Laporta and many others, that I use that as a measuring stick of the people in the sport that, God forbid if something happened to me, I know you'd be one of those folks on the doorstep. Same goes for you. And I told you to tell your wife that if something ever happens, and that's you can't explain that. You can't put that into words. It's just how it is in this community. And so often we've had drivers get injured. We've had crew members, going through a battle with, an ailment. I use Marshall Pruitt as an example and what his wife's going through. And everybody rallies around those in need. And I think, COVID-19 is an example of that. We got so many people outside of motorsports or even in motorsports, Bob Varsha, that are battling this. And you see race teams changing their capacity and their talent to make masks and medical equipment. You got partners like WeatherTech making fueling gloves to keep people safe on the road. You got VP Racing Fuels turning their production facility into making hand sanitizer. So long-winded answer to your question, but it is a family, the motorsports family, and it takes a lot of people that you don't see at the racetrack to support those who are on the road to do what we love so much.
I don't think I could have summarized that one any better.
It's hard to keep, your emotions in check when you start talking about that, because people see it on TV. They see the wins. They see the people that have struggled in a race. They see unfortunate incidents sometimes, but all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes in what is the traveling circus and motorsports is almost can't put it into words.
Well, I've got one. I'm headed into our final kind of segment, you can say. It's a very loosely formatted event here, by the way, if you can't tell. I've got my dog. My dogs are up here. I've got two dogs, and they both have a bed at the window, and they're up here with me all day. What's next? Like, what is the future for John Doonan, right? Like, you've made it to, in theory, the peak of the sports car realm. But what is next? I mean, do we see John Doonan, the global promoter? Do we see John Doonan, a man of the FIA stature? Do we see John Doonan team owner? What are just some, not saying that we need to kick you out of Daytona Beach already, because I'm excited to be there for a long time. But if there is going to be a next chapter, I mean, what's intriguing?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm just insanely honored to have this opportunity at IMSA. I see this as a long-term program with the France family and Ed Bennett, who's been a great teammate to me already in getting here, and lots to do here at IMSA. It come into time where it's a very stable platform. Obviously, the pandemic's put challenges in front of everybody, but I really love the IMSA platform. We got a lot to do here. We got a lot of audience growth that we need. So thanks for helping us, your listeners and those folks that aren't aware of IMSA. We got a lot of work to do here. I'm passionate about the history of the sport, so I've always thought about going vintage racing and vintage historic racing when we're all done. We do a lot to celebrate that. Last year in our 50th anniversary of IMSA, and what Mark Raffoff and Mitch Bishop did with their book to celebrate the history of IMSA. But I'm here to stay at IMSA. I may try to do some things in vintage racing down the road if they'll have me. But frankly, so thrilled with getting back to racing. We had a record-setting Rolex 24, which you were obviously a part of on site here. It was insane weather, insane racing. So I think, the short answer is not going anywhere. Don't really have anything further beyond IMSA. We got a lot of work to do to deliver value for our partners and all of our OEMs that use this to showcase their brands. And man, if I could flip a switch and allow us to go racing tomorrow, I would. But we'll see what the timeline is. We'll operate in it, and you can see a lot more of us versus just the IMSA iRacing Pro Series, which frankly has been an amazing addition to our portfolio. What has happened with iRacing is very exciting. The race tonight at Mid-Ohio was unbelievable with the guys running 1, 2, 3, 4 right nose to tail. It's pretty slick.
That racing stuff's definitely been good. I mean, if you follow along with any of the Swindell SpeedLab and SpeedLab TV stuff, I think we've got 2 or 3 broadcasts tonight. The namesake Kevin Swindell, he's got 2 or 3 wins on network television. So there's a lot of good coming from it. I'm really excited to see what happens next, right? So let's get through this. We'll go back to the real racetracks, and I'm excited to see the growth of esports even more. Took me a while to think of this. But anybody who's had any sort of success at the show thing has had one standout question. So I'm going to ask you, the first guest, you get to choose one track, one car, and any two drivers. What do you want to see?
Well, no question, the track is Road America. It's a special place in my family's heart. There's so many awesome places we visit, but definitely Road America. You know, it may sound a little corny, but that Mazda RT24P and those two guys, Jonathan Bomarito and Harry Tinknell, what they did there last year was amazing. But you think about legends in our sport, and if you had to pick two legends to run, it would certainly be Mark Donohue. I think he was obviously taken from us too early, but from all that I've read about Mark and his ability to engineer and drive, you know, one of the best of all time. And then there's no question a guy like Hurley Haywood and what he's done in IMSA. He's been a hero of mine for a long time. And I know it wasn't running in IMSA, but man, that Porsche 91730 was pretty slick. So
yeah.
You take Road America, and if you could do a co-driver deal, you know, with those two guys, Mark Donohue and Hurley Haywood in that 91730, that'd be a sight to see.
Awesome, John. Well, thank you so much for joining us here. Guest number one, it's the Wheelhouse guys. We're going to cut away to some station identification, commercial break, and when we get back, we have guest number two coming your way. Welcome back, everybody, to episode number one of the Wheelhouse. I'm your host, Chris Wheeler, and joining me all the way from Newport Beach, California, the world-famous Ms. Kate Osborne. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. The world famous, that's very kind of you. Very, 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 very kind of you. But yes, in Newport Beach. And
I mean, don't you have a blue check mark?
No, I cannot. No, literally I have girlfriends who submit it for me even, and I still can't get verified.
Verified. She's
That's how unworldly.
Folks.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you? So I felt bad interrupting your surf this morning.
You actually literally interrupted my surf so much so I was actually still in my wetsuit. I'm not really like quote surfing yet. I'm like more like paddling a lot, but no time but the present. So although that's actually coming to a very quick close because they're apparently officially closing down for activities, even the beaches around here. So, but yeah, I was in my wetsuit and I was using my Apple Watch for the first time, and then you happened to call, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to try and make sure this all works. So thank you for doing that.
Well, luckily, the whole virtual world right now and situations like this is you can't tell that while it was beautiful and sunny in Southern California and you're at the beach, it was really cold here in your hometown of Indianapolis today. Miserable, rainy, windy. Dogs didn't even want to go outside.
Yeah, that's when you know it's bad. But I still maintain those Midwest roots enough that I'm proud to say that, like, if at least the Four Seasons exists, then it's got to be a solid place to be somewhere, even with it's rainy somehow. But it is pretty sunny. Although, to be fair, during quarantine time, we've had a lot of rain. It's like the world is a little bit upset with what's going on, I think, and Newport's confused.
Well,
it doesn't know what it wants.
We could have used this about 5 years ago in Southern California when it needed to rain.
To be fair, though, when it does rain here, it's gorgeous because it really wipes away some of the dust and some of the hikes that are out and about. It brings out the green and the wildflowers. It's really actually very beautiful. In fact,
I love Southern California. It's where I'm from originally, right? Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I love the place that the fact that you can wake up, right? You can throw on some board shorts, some flip flops, a t-shirt, and a hoodie.
Yeah.
You leave the house. And about lunchtime, the smog burns off. Here comes the sun. Hoodie goes away. Get to about dinner. Clouds roll over, sun starts to drop, hoodie's back on, and nothing else changes. Like, you don't need parkas, you don't need closed-toed shoes.
Yeah.
You don't need anything.
Here's the truest difference of all of that is when you're in Florida, you get salty and sandy and like humid. So on top of the difference of like, you can still maintain the sweatshirt at night and sweatshirt in the morning in Florida, but you have to like, there's a humidity that's involved, and all of a sudden you're salty. And for whatever reason in California, it's a decent place.
It's perfect.
Until it falls into the ocean, which
I've been saying that for years.
Hopefully it doesn't happen.
So talk to us a little bit about what's been going on with you. Like, we saw each other in person. Actually, it was my last trip. I don't know about you. We were in St. Pete with Sebastian Bourdais.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually going to have to fly to the Mecum auction Saturday by myself because he was supposed to be qualifying in St. Pete. Unfortunately, COVID-19 shuts down IndyCar.
Yep.
We're on the boat that day, on Friday, on Seb's boat, when they cancel everything. And he books a flight right then to join me. We fly all the way to Phoenix on the first flight out of Tampa. We take an Uber that was a complete disaster to the arena there. And who's the big smile that we get to see? It's you.
I was so excited. It literally felt like I was like, oh, these are my people at my place. It was so strange. And I think like that's one of the misconceptions about automotive and motorsport, that they're similar, and they are in some ways, but there are some true differences. And when you see some motorsport people jump into the automotive space, it's just like, I don't know, it just is so much joy to like, it's like, because when motorsport, we operate like it's sometimes a circus. It's a traveling circus, but you bond over a lot of things when you're in that circus together. And so, yeah, that was super cool to have you guys there. It was my last trip as well. And of course, with the COVID-19 happening, everything else shut down, IndyCar, NASCAR. We were one of the only live shows that was still around, and we popped in like 25 and a half hours of live content just because of, or something like that, because of all the, everything being taken off air. So it was a really wild experience that weekend. A lot of high emotions from a lot of people, but I think it was still a good event from the Mecum standpoint. And you guys had a great time overall, minus all the sweating that happened.
Oh, I was so nervous. There's just nothing that prepares you for it.
Because what were you guys selling?
It was a 2016 GT40 Carbon Sport Edition, one of only 3 in the world.
Boom, right? So yeah,
what made it nerve-wracking though is there was only a couple other like premier cars that day that were estimated to hit that million mark, and we were the last one, and neither of them got close. Like the Porsche, I don't think the Porsche sold just before us. The Senna, McLaren didn't go.
There you go.
And like, no matter how great this car of Seb's was, it's still a Ford.
Yeah.
And you got to remind yourself, like, Porsche and McLaren are going in front of us. One of them with the brand of Senna. And then here's a French guy and a fat white guy walking up on stage with a Ford.
It was good. It was so good. It was perfect. It was perfect.
We got the deal done right there. It was some real quick negotiating, but we got it done. It was.
It was kind of cool to see it. Like we've talked about, it's just like that idea of watching the whole process go down, knowing what you two were thinking kind of in the moment, leading up to the moment, knowing how much the car did mean, I think, overall, to Sebastian and kind of the process for you. You were about to do this by yourself, so I'm glad Sebastian actually showed up.
I told him, I said, if next time you buy something nice, you're selling it on your own. I'm not going.
And then the quick deal making that happened. I mean, it was a good way to cap off that day. That I think the weekend overall was probably one of the highest, if not the highest, the top sellers. I don't know, but it was good. It was a lot of fun.
I think it might have been the only car to hit the $1 million mark on the sale.
Yeah, it was nice to have you guys there. Come back anytime. Next week. By that means, I have no idea when we're all going to be back, but whenever that is.
We actually joked about saying, "Oh, COVID-19 is going to ruin this weekend" on our way out there. We should have pulled it. We should have just done this in Indy in May. Well, guess what? I don't know what you're being told, but I don't know if there's going to be an auction in May.
No, there is not an auction in May. There is not. I got pushed back to June, and I think that's looking a little gloom as well. June gloom is a real thing, I think.
We might have to we don't have to another episode, but like live somewhere, like in person. Probably a bar.
Probably a bar at that point. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, in California, it's, being from Indianapolis, it's interesting the way and perspective of life out here and how, people are talking about the beaches closing and that is true, but it's difficult sometimes too, because the images that are being depicted on, out there online, like that is true. It did feel like the 4th of July this last weekend. And the social distancing thing is a real thing. And it's sometimes it looks like it's not abided by, but people also like, they don't have yards where I live. And so like the beach is their yard and their back, like their playground in a sense. And so the same people that they're quarantining with, they might be out on the beach with. But it's a tough time to navigate. But I think like ultimately, like there's a lot of great, first and foremost, thanks to everybody who are on the front lines, because you and I are in the comfort of our homes, and there's a lot of people that are not. And that's, I think, an important thing to like remember, as there are some positives in this for a lot of people. I mean, from the angle of you and I and our 250 plus days on the road at times and years. And I know that like this is definitely the longest I've ever been home consecutively, if not in total already in a year. Yeah. Or however those numbers will come out. But there's a lot of positive in that. There's clarity in the stillness and the solitude. There's a lot of little things that are on the long-term to-do list that you can kind of start to check off. I think like people are getting closer. They're more connected in a very disconnected kind of way. So I think it's a tough time for so many, and we all have our own lists of problems, but I think, and challenges and fears and insecurities that go along with this time. But I think like, as long as people show people grace and they have a little, mercy and perspective on this, that as long as people maintain their health, we're going to get back in a way that we may not know, but it will be a way for sure.
So I have a list here, some stuff for you. I'm going to clear that off, but I have a few things, but I have one really important one. John Doonan was on just a little bit ago. He opened up the show for us, and I mentioned this to him. I really want to take the opportunity with this program to really let the outside viewers and listeners that maybe don't have a job or a career in motorsports, or maybe there's something else that they want to do in a different industry, and really be able to give them advice and help these people. So we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have laid the foundation for so many people because you've shown your willingness to adapt to changing everything, right? I mean, the industry changes, the needs of personnel change, and you continue to change yourself to become the next thing that's needed in your career path. And I really think that's helped prolong you. And you're only going up still. So how do you do that? Like, how do you bounce it back and forth and really find a way to always, be needed in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tough, because I think ultimately you're right. Adaptability is a big word in motorsport, and I think from the angle of adaptability is one of those things that you have to be adaptable. Whether you're a driver, whether you're personnel, whether you're in the media, that's a key word. And a highlighted word right now during this COVID-19 time. For me, I think it kind of is my personality and my nature. I have been, I think tenacious is a word that would be on the strengths list for me. I am very tenacious. I go about the grind, and I have had to grind a lot, and I'm still grinding, right? Like that's part of like the process. And I think so often, and I have felt this, you get beat down, you get tired, you get told so much that either the doors are shut in your face, no's are happening, things like, appearance wise, oh, you need to be more glamorous, or you need to look like this, or you need to sound like this, like those things that are constantly harped at you in ways. Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I haven't been frustrated and exhausted at certain times in this life. But same thing with what we're doing here in COVID, and what you're doing right now in this show, and what I've done with some of the opportunities that I've kind of created here during COVID as well, is you continue to create. And, I was talking to somebody on my show about the fact that, like, as a freelancer, that's part of your nature, and that they have created their path when there was nothing to be created as well. And I think like that's kind of the angle that you can take with this COVID opportunity is, and also what I've learned in my industry is you have to keep creating. You have to keep coming up with what is something, where's the value that you can bring to something when, it's whether it be a production, or maybe it's somebody who's working in marketing, right? And what is your angle? What's your little authentic, genuine, sincere self going to bring value to that? And not be cookie cutter to whatever. I'm going to use the example of a blonde haired, green eyed girl who can talk on camera. What's my value? Who am I that's genuine and sincere to me, Katie, that I can offer and bring to the table? And it's only been recently that I'm starting to identify what that is, comparatively speaking. This last year with Mecum, I kind of had the realization Mecum Auctions is a show that, that we were talking about earlier, but it's an automotive classic car world. And like, I don't want to be a dude, right? I don't want to be a guy on that show. I do want to be a female, and I want to be a feminine female. But what's my hook that's different than what these dudes who are the other commentators on the show, right? They're talking under the hood. They're talking about, the power, the speed, what that is, the horsepower, etc. And my hook is, okay, well, let me come in with the storytelling side, the emotional appeal, not to take away the fact that I'm a female, but to highlight that and bring that to the table. So I think overall, it's kind of the advice in that way is understanding the grind, knowing that it's not easy, knowing that when you get beat down, you have to figure out how on earth you're going to get yourself back up on your 2 feet and keep going, and then finding the value that you bring to any kind of show because you are being authentically and genuine within yourself is how I would take that.
That's perfect, and that's the answer we needed. I think it's the answer the people needed. It's for the people.
Woo! It's for the people.
So you do have your own show. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what's interesting about the show, so currently I work with, pre-COVID, I was working with NASCAR and Fox on the ARCA shows, and Mecum hosted a couple of shows along the way from a studio setting and network setting, and that's kind of been my bread and butter. But obviously this time has kind of presented its own set of challenges for people. For the last couple of years, I have been in the way of myself. I have, whether it be my insecurity of putting myself out there too much and it not being successful or not working, kind of like what you're doing is just, creating a show and doing what you can do to make it work. And I know I was afraid of the failure side of that for the last couple of years. And so finally in week 2 of quarantine, I was like, I got to do something. And that was exactly the nudge that I needed because I had been told and advised over the last couple of years to do a digital show of some sort of nature. And I hadn't, and I'd been sitting on it for a while. And so, yeah, I started something called A Drink With. I don't know that's what's going to continue on as its name, but it just worked with the hashtag. Turns out like GQ has a show called A Drink With as well. So I may have to change that. I have no idea at this point. But basically it's just, I wanted to kind of, my style is kind of like your style. And I just want to have a conversation. I want to talk about life. I want to talk about lifestyle and some deeper meanings within industry, and be vulnerable and be authentic and be genuine. And so basically I just wanted to have a drink and catch up with someone, and it happened to be on camera while we were doing it. And Instagram was a great place for that. So yeah, I'm on like week, I don't know, whatever week it is. I think I've had like 17 or 18 shows at this point.
Wow.
That are going to be pushed to YouTube and then in podcast form and then wrapped back around into IGTV. So, but they're just supposed to be super casual. Grab a beverage and join us, because it's just kind of fun to get to know some of these people on a level that you and I can interact with at the racetrack or at auctions or whatever, but where you get to sit down and just, hang out and talk about life.
I like it. I'm excited. I can't wait for the next one. It's been
fun. It's been good. It's really cool because I've been learning, not only is it bringing me joy and it's also giving me something to do, but my hope is that it's also helping people in this time to get to know somebody else and maybe find a new person that they want to connect with, or, bring some joy and laughter to them.
I like it. Well, I have one final question. It's going to be the final question that this show is just going to have. You have the opportunity to pick one racetrack,
one
car, and any 2 drivers to watch compete against each other. Does this car have to be trackside? Like, is this a car that's already? It's any car.
Oh, Chris.
Any track, any car, any 2 drivers to go heads up.
No heads up on even this question, my friend. That's a tough one. On the spot? Come on, it's getting hot. Anyone else hot in here? Okay. Degrees, 52. Okay, what's one of my favorite racetracks? I mean, Indy's so iconic. It's our bread and butter. It's all, but like, I feel like I can't do that because can it be really outlandish?
It could be whatever you want it to be. It could be Rainbow Road if that's what you want.
Here's the thing. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be interesting to see, but the problem is you couldn't put cars on this kind of track really. But I'm thinking like Crandon, like, like a short course off-road track, right? Where like you have the land rush start, it's 100 miles an hour into turn 1. Okay, that's where I'm like going with it. There's like little elements involved in that. Fine, Crandon. That's way in God knows where, Wisconsin. I don't know. Rhinelander, close to Rhinelander.
Crandon,
Wisconsin. Wisconsin. It's in Crandon, Wisconsin. Okay, so Crandon. Man, 900 horsepower trucks have a hard time getting around that sometimes. But say there's like some pavement or tarmac down. I guess I'd want to have a car that was super tactical and a car that had a lot of speed, and see which one really. Man, I don't know.
Pick one car.
It has to be a car that could operate in there. It'd have to be almost like a rallycross car, because it'd have to get through the muds and the blue groove and all that jazz.
And then pick two drivers to go heads up.
This is the longest question yet, and I haven't even gotten to all the answers yet. Okay. I'd like to see someone like a Kyle Busch, probably, because you need to have someone who has the ability to drive a car to an angle, like to some degree. And I'd put like Alexander Rossi.
Oh,
a little personality. Both of them have a little personality. Both of them have some skills. Both of them can drive and have proven they can drive other things.
I think it'd be awesome.
What a fast.
So we're gonna put Rossi, Kyle Busch together at Crandon in a rallycross car. I like it.
Fine. Boom.
I like it. In fact, we might have to try this out on iRacing now, just to feel it out.
See what happens. I'm just curious who will get out of turn one, because that land rush start into like 100-mile-an-hour turn is gnarly. It's insane. That would be super cool. Yeah. Thanks. That's good. I haven't really thought that one through before.
Well, for everybody at home, that's going to do it. It's episode 1. It's in the books. But check out www.swindellspeedlab.com. All of our social medias as Swindell SpeedLab. And we can't wait to see you for episode number 2. Thanks for Chris Wheeler, Scotty Osborne, John Doonan, who's somewhere else in the world already. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.